My name is Sierra Silvis, and I'm doing my oral presentation on Elizabeth Cady Stanton and her role in the women's suffrage movement during the 1800s. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was born in 1815 in Jonestown, New York. She was the daughter of Margaret and Daniel Cady. They were known as outstanding citizens, never really had any problems with anybody. Daniel Cady was a lawyer and a state assemblyman, and this is where Elizabeth Cady Stanton learned a lot of her informal legal knowledge from, rather than learning it in school, which she did attend. She learned a lot of it from her dad as well. In 1840, Elizabeth married Henry Stanton, who was a known abolitionist, and together they both worked together to head on that journey as well. And whenever they were living in Albany, New York, and in Boston as well, they would have some known abolitionist leaders stay with them to help them out as well and help them with their journey on traveling and their lectures over the reason to abolish slavery. Eventually, Elizabeth Cady Stanton got into the women's suffrage movement. She started with her lectures as well as working with her husband still for the anti-slavery movement. And then she met Lucretia Mott, and they decided to host the convention in Seneca Falls, New York, which is known as the starting point really for the women's suffrage movement. It's what really got things going and brought it to a national level of importance as well during that time. At the convention, this is also where they drafted the Declaration of Sentiments, where they listed 18 grievances that women had, and they also added the words woman and woman into the declaration to make it more fitting for everybody. And then at the same time, she was starting petitions in New York to have the New York Married Women's Property Act installed by Congress to make it more fair what happens to women's property and things like that. She was still working with her husband for the anti-slavery movement at this point. It wasn't really her focus. Her focus was still on the women's suffrage movement, but she was still dabbling with the abolitionist side as well. In 1851, she met Susan B. Anthony, and this really kickstarted their friendship, which it revved up the women's suffrage movement as well. Elizabeth Cady Stanton had 7 kids, so she couldn't travel with Susan B. Anthony as much, but she would write speeches for Anthony to deliver whenever Stanton couldn't be there. And in 1862, Elizabeth and her husband Henry were also focusing more on Civil War movements and advocating for the 13th Amendment. They spent a little bit more time focusing on that, while Elizabeth was still also helping Susan B. Anthony with speeches, any works and things like that. In 1869, Elizabeth and Susan B. Anthony started the NWSA, which is the National Women's Suffrage Association, which they started after Black men got the right to vote, but women still had no right to vote. And they started the organization because some people in the suffrage movement decided that it's not right to be angry, or it's not right that Black men got the right to vote, women didn't. And some saw it as still a victory and weren't angry about it. So this is why Elizabeth and Susan B. created the NWSA. In 1890, the two organizations joined together and they became the NAWSM, the National Association for Women's Suffrage Movement. They joined together to kind of reunite as one and have a more united front altogether on the suffrage movement to show that women can obviously work together to get the right to vote and have equality to men. In the 1880s, Elizabeth focused more on publishing her own works rather than traveling and giving her speeches. She published 3 volumes of the history of women's suffrage, which entailed what it was like for her and the other leaders to have to fight for such a basic right for people, and the journey that it took, even though they hadn't won it yet. They were just telling what it was like. And then she also wrote some works stating that religion can kind of be used against women in their movement for equality, because religion can be used as a reasoning to not give women that right during that time period. Sadly, Elizabeth Cady Stanton passed away in 1902, 18 years before the 19th Amendment was passed, which gave women the right to vote, finally.